at Better, a medical center for complete living. We specialize in helping patients feel, look, and live younger. How do we do this? Through functional medicine. Functional medicine looks at restoring your performance back to optimal as it was in your youth. And we look at everything from diet to genetics to metabolic processes, your physiology, and the ultimate piece of the puzzle, though, is bioidentical hormone replacement. That's what we're known for. I want to introduce you today to Dr. Shabnam Daskar. She's our Director of Medical Education. She's a brainiac. That's all I can describe her as. She loves reading medical literature. In fact, when we hopped on this webinar earlier, she was like, I have to tell you about the study I just read. And, so our protocols at the clinic are as up to date as they can be, because Dr. Carr immerses herself into reading all the latest medical studies, and we adjust our clinic protocols based on her recommendations. I mean, everything from adding the ACE questionnaire for adverse childhood events. I hadn't heard of that. I'd heard about trauma and the trauma response. I've spent a lot of my time looking at, all the things that impact health. When you listen to my triangle, you hear me talking about your mental, emotional, spiritual well-being, but the actual questionnaire came from Dr. Carr and the research she was doing at the time. So it's little things like that to talking about DIND, and she would go, oh, Natasha, we have to talk about DIND. And I'm like, what is that? And she goes, drug-induced nutrient depletions. And I'm like, there's a term for that? Because I always tell patients, when you take hormones, they're causing depletions of nutrients. Any process your body does uses nutrients. If you make a muscle fiber, if you digest food, if you think, if you run, if you do anything, your body's using nutrients to do its daily work. That's the fuel for your body, right? And nutrients come from food. The thing is, I had a patient today, which was just perfect timing for this webinar that Dr. Carr and I are doing for you, which I should mention is, should I take nutritional supplements or not? And I had a patient today, she's been working with me for 3 years. And I'm looking at her trends and all her labs, and I'm saying, for the last 3 years, we've not hit your methylation targets. Now, methylation is beyond the scope of our talk today, but it's something that I look at to predict future risk for everything from cancer and autoimmune disease to osteoporosis, heart disease, strokes, all of these things. So I'm just explaining to her that I can tell she's not taking her B vitamins regularly. And she goes, well, on the days I eat a cantaloupe, then I'm not going to take my B vitamins because I should be getting my vitamins from food. And the days that I eat oranges, I don't take my vitamin C. And the days I do this, I don't take that. And the first thought was I didn't educate her well from the start. And I think that's why this webinar and this recording is so important, because when you start your process with us and we recommend nutritional supplements, Dr. Carr is going to explain to you why it's so important to take these. I will say to you, do not stop them until you see us at your next visit. Dr. Carr and I see you through your process at the clinic. Yes, you get your visits with me, but she's a very integral part of our programs and processes at the clinic. And it's always wonderful to have an academic perspective, someone who looks at your chart without all the day-to-day distractions, right? I mean, as I get to know you, I talk to you about so many different things, and then I go, oh, and you please take this, 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 and this, but I don't go into the details as to why. Whereas Dr. Carr, at the time of her visit, she's going to look at your entire picture. She's looking at all your labs and the issues we've identified, where I might have missed recommending. Dr. Carr, I've forgotten to recommend vitamin D to my last 5 patients this last week. right? I mean, an essential vitamin that they cannot make or get from food, and I have forgotten. So that's why Dr. Carr's input is so important. But I think the foundational education as to what is a good supplement, or the difference between good and bad, should we be taking supplements, why, what, where, why do doctors tell patients not to take supplements? You know, because you're going to get confused if you go see your family doctor and they say something completely opposite to what we're saying. You know, I want you to have all of this information. So as verbose as I've been, I apologize. Without further ado, here's my amazing colleague, Dr. Shabnam Daskar.
Thank you, Natasha. That was such a glowing introduction. Thank you very much. So yes, both of us, and in fact, all of us in this field of functional medicine, we get this question very often, right? Why should I take nutritional supplements? Because I'm eating so well. So there are a few major reasons. Number one being, as Natasha was talking about this patient, you cannot get adequate, vitamin mineral supplements from your food only. Now, we are not suggesting you should not focus on good quality food, but relying on only food for all your requirements it's not going to happen. So talking about vitamin B12, because my medical practice is mostly in India, and I have a lot of patients who are vegetarians. For people who are vegetarians, for them to get adequate B12, that is, I don't want to use that term, but that is being delusional actually. So they do need to supplement, number one, because they are not going to start eating meat, suddenly for the B12. And as Dr. I was talking about methylation. So one of the numbers we look at is something called homocysteine. And when you are, part of our clinic, you will definitely get a homocysteine level checked. And of course, in Canada, it's covered by healthcare. And for my Indian patients, they have to do it from the lab. So homocysteine can be very high if you are deficient in a bunch of B vitamins, B12 being one of them. Now, if you are a lifelong vegetarian, where is that B12 going to come from if you don't supplement? The cantaloupe does not contain B vitamins, not adequate anyway. Then the other thing is, one is the type of food that you're eating. The next is, where does your food come from? Like, Dr. R was talking about this lady who thinks that she's going to get enough vitamin C from her oranges. Now, do you know where that orange was grown and how long it was on transit? How was it? What stage of its, was it plucked when it was ripe? So all these different factors would also decide how much vitamin C is finally there in that orange.
Whether it was harvested green or ripe,
yes,
with chemicals to ripen it along the way, the quality of the soil, is it, do they do adequate crop rotation? Are they adding nutrients to the soil? Then you can go back to this whole thing about the difference between dirt and soil, which is too much for this conversation. Yeah. But, I just also wanted to point out that a patient this week just told me this. She said, my partner is vegan. And he is the most irritable person. And she says, when he's irritable, my stress goes up. And so she finally this year got him to start eating some eggs and a bit of fish. And she said the difference in him is remarkable, in that when he eats eggs, almost instantly she can tell his irritability factor is lower. When he eats fish, he is calmer. And I don't tell people to not be vegan or vegetarian if that's what they choose to do. I always say, if you're an ethical vegan or a philosophical vegan, by all means, all the power to you. I could never be a vegan or a vegetarian. I just love my meat too much, and I feel good on meat. I don't feel good on my, we used to do this as an East Indian background in my house. Mom used to have a meatless Monday, but it was more of a religious thing, right? You can't eat meat on Mondays, and then certain my friends couldn't eat meat on Tuesdays, and so we went these days. But I can tell you, I didn't like the meatless Monday or whatever it was, because I just didn't feel good. So here's a patient saying, I see it in my partner that what he eats affects his body, but his beliefs are veganism is the best for healthy aging and longevity. And that's where I will draw the line. If you think you're being a vegetarian or vegan for healthy aging and longevity, it's not accurate, right? But if you're doing it because you can't bear the thought of an animal dying, by all means, but you will need to supplement extra. And I think that's the point you were making, right?
Yeah.
As vegetarians, you're not going to get B12 that comes from animal meat. So you have to take some. You're not getting enough iron, and the iron that you do get is less bioavailable from plants. When we say bioavailable, it means can your body assimilate and process and absorb it, because there's different forms of each molecule, right? And so, you know, depending on how it's prepared, what the source is, and all of these things, it'll affect it. But I want to make one point, because you mentioned this at the start. Food cannot give you everything. Now, I know a couple in their 60s. They are amazingly in good shape, muscular, active, fit, very amazing couple, and they don't take any supplements. Excuse me. So I'll just say this much. That would be a 1 in 1,000 kind of occurrence, where you can be in your 60s, take no supplements, excuse me, and get everything you want or you think you need from your food because you feel good. However, for most people, the supply and demand issue dictates that we take supplements. I live my life at such a fast pace. You know, I eat pristinely, Dr. Carr. There are things I will rather starve than eat fast food. I will rather starve than put poor quality nutrients into my body. You know this about me, right? That being said, I love my wine, which depletes nutrients too, right? So we should talk about that. But that being said, you know, when I work in the emergency room and I'm running short on sleep, when I'm busy in the clinic seeing patients and running back and forth and homeschooling kids and, you know, trying to exercise and be active and do all these other things, there is no way I can get enough nutrition from my food to support the demands I put on my body and my brain. You know, at the same time, we study constantly. Using your brain uses up nutrients, right? So you might be sitting on your butt, not doing a whole lot, but you're thinking and studying and your brain's working. So you need to feed your body nutrients. And I don't know, other than that couple, I don't know anyone who can feel vital and optimal without adding nutrients because of all of these reasons, including DIND.
Okay, so moving on to DIND. So before DIND, I just wanted to mention one more thing about B12. So people who have low vitamin B12 and your patient's partner, you know, it just reminded me of that. Low B12 is associated with a lot of mood disorders. So, and next comes what Dr. I was talking about, drug-induced nutrient depletion. So that sounds like a very big expression, but what it basically means is some of your prescription drugs are taking away vital nutrients from your body. Now, the commonest ones that come to the top of my, I mean, these are very common drugs. One is metformin. Many of you are on metformin because of diabetes or PCOS or, you know, any of these things. Metformin depletes you of B12, and there are enough studies to support that. The next is birth control pills and B vitamins. Then hormone therapy. So a lot of you come to Dr. Iyer for hormone therapy. When you are on hormone therapy, because nutrients are required to process hormones. So that is another big one. Then statin medications and coenzyme Q10. So statin is all these cholesterol lowering medications. So they can lower your levels of CoQ10. And CoQ10, again, is a test that you can do in a specialized laboratory. But even if you don't test, it is ideal to take a supplemental CoQ10. How much and how long, that is that's an individual conversation, one-on-one, but it is not 20 milligram. It could be anything between 100 to 200 milligram.
That's right. And, you know, instead of spending money on the test,
Yeah.
I just say to patients, at age 50, Dr. Carr, are you making enough coenzyme Q10 to support your muscles and your mitochondrial function? Mitochondria are the powerhouses that make energy inside every single cell. When your mitochondria get sick and they wear out, that's when you die, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you know you're short on CoQ10, especially if you're taking a statin? Your muscles are weak. If you read all the side effects on statin drugs, what is it? Depression, fatigue, muscle weakness, aches and pains, and the list goes on and on and on. Erectile dysfunction and all these things. What is it? It's depleting one, cholesterol in your body, and two, essential nutrients, including coenzyme Q10, which overall, a lot of people don't talk about coenzyme Q10, but I think it's one of those things that every person should be taking. That being said, you mentioned B12, Dr. Carr. I want to talk about B12 and B complex. So I just saw a patient today and he is taking B12 only, right? And because it's touted as, yes, everybody should take B12, it gives you energy, it's your stress thing, whatever. But in nature, B12 doesn't occur by itself. It occurs with other B vitamins. And so we have a multitude of Bs. There's dexpanthenol and pyridoxine and B complex and hydroxycobalamin and methylcobalamin and all of these things. So we recommend in our clinic that you take a B complex. And since more than half of the people are poor methylators, we recommend, or I absolutely recommend, a methylated B complex. I'm going to lead you into this talk on quality right now and why not all supplements are equal, why you can't just run to the store and buy something with this. I had a patient who was taking supplements and was at high risk for heart disease and diabetes, wasn't feeling very good, had low energy, low sex drive, low everything in his early 40s. Put him on a whole pile of supplements, started him on some DHEA, which is a hormone, because that's one of the first steps, assessing adrenal function. And everything started to normalize. His lipids, his heart disease risk, everything started to normalize. We changed his diet up a bit. And when I saw him the first time, I was happy with his progress. Second time, I said, why is everything changing and going back to before? I feel like you're not making progress anymore. Did you change your diet? Did you go back to eating how you were before? And he says, I've changed nothing. I said, okay, so let's look. Sleep, diet, exercise, lifestyle. Nope, everything. I'm following everything. Okay, so supplements, are you still taking? Well, I'm taking supplements. I'm just not taking the ones you recommended for me. And I said, why? And he said, well, the B vitamin is $8 cheaper at the health food store by my house. I said, okay, so can you show me the brand? Can you not? Anyway, it was not, it was a reasonable B complex if you read the ingredients. But that was the change he made. And when we put him back on a high potency, regulated quality B vitamin, a B complex, lo and behold, and this is absolutely measured, right? Because we changed nothing else. We put the B back to prove to him whether he actually needed it or not. And he's a very data-driven kind of person. And lo and behold, goes back on that particular one that I like, and there he is, labs back to normal again, back to optimal again. So taking a vitamin can make that much difference to blood testing that we use to monitor people's progress as they approach healthy aging and youth again.
Thank you, Natasha. So just, when you mentioned data-driven person, I wanted to add something about B vitamins. So the only B vitamin that we measure on routine labs is a B12. So if you are deficient in B12, it doesn't imply that you are, replete with the other ones, because we're not measuring all of them in the routine labs.
Thank you.
Yes, we can measure all of them. There are specialized testing available. Some of you want to know the deep down details. We can help you with that as well. But my point is,
testing, yeah.
Yes, my point is you're only testing for B12, so it doesn't mean the others are normal because we're not testing them. So that is one.
Great point. Thank you.
You're welcome, Natasha. So the other thing now next comes to why, if you discuss with about quality, and that is one thing. The other thing is why you may not always get a lot of support from your doctor, your other doctor, not Dr. Arami, about nutritional supplementation. And so one of the big things is the supplement world. So supplement quality is not controlled like pharmaceutical drugs. So if a pharmaceutical drug says it has 200 milligram of something, metformin, let's say, 500 milligram of metformin, it will contain 500 milligram of metformin. So the only cushion they have is, I think, about 1 to 2%, which is very highly regulated. And that is why pharmaceutical medications cost so much, because there's so many quality control things in place. Versus in the supplement world, it is voluntary. So obviously this testing, and a lot of testing is done by a third party. So this is not the company's testing facility only, because if it is my supplement and I can, fudge the numbers. But if I'm giving it to a third party who is not a part of my company or anything, I don't own a supplement company. It's not a part of the company. That is independent testing. So they don't have any vested interest in, saying that yes, your supplement contains what it's supposed to. So most of these supplements that Dr. Iyer and I recommend and we use are the ones which have voluntarily actually tested in their own facilities as well as a third party to see whether they actually contain what they claim to contain. And there are a lot of, we can talk until kingdom come about this, because a lot of the things are, if they don't control the source, so they have to depend on vendors to give them the raw material. For example, curcumin. Now, one of the companies we use, they get their turmeric, and turmeric is not curcumin, by the way. They get the turmeric from a very special, organic and organically grown place in India. And interestingly, Natasha, that particular company doesn't even sell in India because their quality standards are so high. So what they do, these companies, the vendor sends their curcumin, they check each and every sample, and they have told us all the samples don't contain the same amount.
That's right.
Curcumin is, thank you. Curcumin is 95% curcuma longa versus turmeric, the root. So again, if you think that you're getting all your curcumin from that root, it's not true, because the root contains only about 7 to 10% of curcuma longa, which is the anti-inflammatory one. So that is the problem. And interestingly, this is, again, I think we'll post the link to this paper. This was on melatonin. So this paper came out in the Journal of Clinical Sleep Medicine. They looked at 31 different melatonins available in the market. Now, of course, the paper didn't tell us which ones these were, because I know what you want to know. Is my one included in that? So they just bought them from the market, and what they found is, so they did some very fancy testing called, they checked to see how much of actual melatonin they claimed and how much it contained. So out of the 31, samples, they found that some of them contained minus 83%. So if this
minus 83.
How much?
It was less than 0%.
If it was a 2 milligram melatonin, tablet, what would be minus 83% of that? And then you'll come and say, melatonin doesn't do anything for me.
I tried it. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Yes. I actually, on that topic, I had a patient say that the brand you and this particular person works shift work and would never buy it anywhere else. Even when they moved out of Calgary, would phone and order from the clinic. Because this melatonin works better than any other melatonin he's tried. And so he will only get that particular melatonin. So now it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
But at that time, I wasn't thinking that he was buying substandard or lower quality or lower potency. So when we're talking about quality, what we're looking for in companies is their integrity in procuring raw materials. And I like the curcumin example because I remember there was a point in time where curcumin was back ordered. We couldn't get any product with that as part of the ingredient list. And it was because when they did the third-party testing, the percentage of the active ingredient was too low for them to purchase it and use it in their product. Whereas not any other company, but most companies don't do the third-party testing. They don't do the potency testing. So they buy the raw materials not knowing how potent it is. And that's how you can end up with such a variation of minus 83% all the way to 200% extra.
Oh, so it was not 200%, Natasha. This particular study was 478%.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So instead of 2 milligrams, you're suddenly getting, I don't know, 10, 15, but whatever, right? So, and there's no consistency batch to batch.
Yes, batch to batch, there is no consistency.
And that's why you cannot trust things that you buy on Amazon, for example, or just random brands that aren't invested. And I just had a patient yesterday say to me, she's using phosphatidylcholine. And phosphatidylcholine is frighteningly expensive. It is one of my most favorite supplements because for me, I feel it in my brain, right? And I'm spending almost $200 for my month's supply. and she was buying it for $18.99. I said, there's something wrong with this. Because one, phospholipids are so complicated because of the omega ratios and all of these other things that we can go into at a different webinar. But, how can you get a difference in price? $18.99 versus, like tenfold difference in pricing. There's got to be something to do with the bioavailability, where it's made, how available it is to your body, and all of those things. So suffice to say that it doesn't always have to be more expensive to buy the right quality, because I don't want you to think that we're trying to tell you have to take the most expensive supplement. Case in point is a patient who owns a health food store who saw me, and she said, the probiotic you recommended is way more powerful than anything I can get from my store, and it's actually cheaper than what I carry in my store. How do you do that? And I said, I don't do anything. The docs and the naturopath and the nutritionist and everybody, we research everything. You decide. You're always saying, we need to carry this, we need to carry that, we need to recommend this based on the research that you do. And, it's not about the pricing. It's about wasting your money on something that's not going to give you results. If there's less than what you think, if there's more than what you think, you're not going to get consistent results. And that's the point. Nutrients are needed to fuel your whole entire body, from your brain down to your toes, even your hair. Right? And a lot of people care whether their hair is thick or thin and falling, and their nail strength and quality and their skin health, and all of these things are affected by nutrients, and you want to put the right quality. If you're going to take something that has minus 83% or 8.3, whatever, of a thing, you've spent, okay, let's say you bought it for $8 instead of $28, but that's $8 down the toilet, and you've polluted and contaminated your body with stuff that shouldn't be in there. And that just brings me to that 2015 New York Attorney General. It was a big, big deal. GNC, Walmart, Walgreens, and I forget who the other, Target, they went in and they looked at the supplements they were carrying, and only 21% of them actually had the active ingredients. They were finding dust and animal byproducts and different contaminants in these supplements that were being sold as healthy health supplements. And patients don't know the difference. When we could test vitamin D on blood work, yeah. You know the story. I tested a patient who was taking Kirkland brand vitamin D, and I couldn't find it in his body. And we switched him to a high potency bioavailable vitamin D, which by price comparison is actually the cheapest vitamin D you can find right now. And when he took that one, you could see the level in his blood rise. So basically, he was wasting $20 taking pills that were doing nothing and peeing or pooping them out for no benefit at all. And patients think that, well, I'm not supposed to feel different. I'm just taking a vitamin. And yet when patients take the right quality and potency, the first thing they'll say is, I didn't know I could feel better from just taking vitamins.
Thank you, Natasha.
Quality and potency, the sourcing of the raw materials.
So the other things I wanted to mention was, one is you are not getting what it claims. The second thing is you may be getting too much of what you don't need. So again, going back to the melatonin example, too much of melatonin can reduce your levels of serotonin. And as you know, serotonin is involved with so many different, it's a
happy hormone.
One of the ones, the gut is the largest, serotonin area of serotonin receptor. So that's why Dr. Iyer and I talk about gut-brain immune. But anyway, I'm digressing. Going back to the quality, the other big thing is many of these poor quality supplements, they also contain a lot of contaminants, and some of the contaminants are like serious prescription medications, particularly in relation to, so the commonest supplements which are contaminated are weight loss, then energy supplements and sports supplements and sexual health supplements. So many of these sexual health supplements actually contain sildenafil. So that is Viagra. Yeah, and Viagra is a prescription drug, and not everyone can take that because it has to be. You will know that, when you're
That's
writing
right.
a prescription for Viagra, you are
Blood
actually.
pressure, heart disease risk, and
Yes,
all of those things need to be monitored. So what they're doing is they're putting actual medication in a
yes.
supplement
Steroids
so
is
that
the other
people
one.
think it works and it's sold as a natural supplement.
Exactly, and the reason
Crazy.
your doctor who is not aware of all these things is why they are concerned, and I am concerned as well. So some of the serious side effects from supplements, what has it done to people? So there was one paper, I think it was this was from the US. So there were 23,000 emergency department visits and a whole lot of about 2,000 hospitalizations over a period of, I think it was 4 years. But then that does not include all those people who were at home who didn't feel sick enough to go to the hospital. Now, why is this scary? As physicians, it is really scary.
Those are supplement side effects that put 2,000 people in the hospital for
Yeah,
admission.
and yes, and of course, this particular paper didn't look at what they had taken and what it contained. It wasn't designed for that. But basically, so what it said on the emergency room, this was what had happened. And some of the serious things are like really serious liver injury to the point of liver failure. Like, that is extremely serious. Then comes, things like kidney problems,
Mm-hmm.
then strokes. So
Wow.
again, sometimes we can't say whether it was the contaminants in the supplements or the supplement itself. A lot of things in it, ifs and buts. One story about thyroid, I had written about it in one of my blog posts. So this was this lady who was taking what she thought was a thyroid supplement, and it was not supposed to contain thyroid hormones in it because hormones it's a prescription medication.
Mm.
So she was in the ER with a thyrotoxicosis.
Wow. So like she got overdosed on thyroid
Got
hormone taking
such
a
a high
supplement.
dose of thyroid hormones that they had to do I think they had to do a plasmapheresis. So they had to remove her blood, filter it out.
Wow.
Like, can you imagine something like that happening? That's like absolutely criminal. So this is the reason why, if you don't find a lot of support from your physician, is these are the reasons. So we were having this
Yes, a
Twitter
lot of doctors, one of our sleep docs that
conversation.
we refer to tells patients not to take 5-HTP and he prescribes tryptophan. Now, two things. One, you have to pay for 5-HTP. Tryptophan is a prescription, so it's covered by your benefits. And he says to patients, nope, don't take 5-HTP. It can make you very sick. There's studies and all of that. So what he's referring to is a study where they were looking at the benefit risk of taking 5-HTP, which I prescribe a lot of, and I take it every day myself, right? But he was saying how it caused liver damage and all of that. What it turns out is the product used in the study was very highly contaminated with liver toxicants, right? So substances that can really damage your liver were added into the supplement because nobody was checking purity, potency, and quality.
Yes, that is so important because one more thing is, because of the ongoing coronavirus pandemic, a lot of people are, they take immune boosting supplements, and you and I always talk about why do you want to boost your immune system? What you're looking for is immune resilience. So in my world and Dr. Iyer's world, immune boosting can make you prone to an autoimmune condition. So you want better immunity so that you can withstand something that comes to you. So some of these supplements are like, we are really afraid. So there was this interesting Twitter conversation going on with a liver specialist. He says, oh, I am so afraid of people taking all these, so-called immune boosting supplements because I'm probably going to get a lot more patients now. So that is one thing. And some of them contain things like heavy metals. And
Right.
particularly, Natasha, in India, they have a whole bunch of these herbals, which people think that they can get from India. And now, of course, people are not traveling as much. But when they go, and it's not just India, it's whichever country they come from, they feel, oh, I'm getting these very natural and very whatever. Some of them have been found to contain really high toxic levels of heavy metals.
Mm-hmm.
So my point is, again, going back to what we talked about, quality. Now, again, how will you know about quality? One of the things that Dr. Iyer and I always say is, we will never recommend a supplement that both of us or anyone in our family has not taken. So these are the very same supplements that we are taking ourselves.
And if we won't take it, there's a reason.
There's a reason. If you're not taking it, then either we don't need it, but it's not a quality factor.
That's
so
right.
As I always say, I will not recommend something to my patient that I am not going to use myself. So another way of finding out is, as Dr. Iyer was saying about, some patients who felt better when they switched to these. This is something I have told a lot of your patients. I said, are you open to just trying, what we have in our office for just 3 months? After 3 months, if you don't feel there's a difference between the two, you can switch back to whichever brand you were on before. Mm-hmm. And most people, Natasha, do you realize none of them have said, I want to go back to the old ones?
Well, actually, remember when we tried that compounding place for micronutrients, when we'd test everybody's micronutrients and then we'd find out exactly what they need. And there's a company that would make that particular combination with those particular doses. So there was customized per person. And two people in particular, one is a competitive power lifter representing Canada at one point, and he's really into his fitness and his mental and physical health and well-being. And he was like, I thought this would be cheaper and better for me, but nope, I'm going right back to the other stuff. And then the other fellow was also very healthy, very fit. And then I just stopped compounding and having it customized. I thought, you know what, just take the stuff that we know makes you feel better and different. So just as we have to wrap up.
I'm just adding something too, because you mentioned sports and fitness. So this is where many of you are into competitive sports and you have a list of things that should not be in your pee when they test. So that is, I think it's called the WADA, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, if you are in competitive sports, you run your life through that, WADA list of things that should not be there. So unfortunately, this was again a paper, I think it was in sports medicine. So this particular athlete, she was banned for 1 year instead of 5 years because she had already checked everything. And again, the same problem, she didn't know that there was something in it which shouldn't have been there and it showed up in her urine. So if you are into competitive sports, you have to be super, super careful of what you're putting into your mouth. Of course, everyone else has to be, but this is one of the big ones, So they said that her penalty was less because she had made sure that she had checked with everyone whether she could take that. And even after doing so much, she still ended up with something that was
failing in her urine test. So this whole why take supplements? You're busy, you're stressed, you're not sleeping, you're not eating the most pure, potent quality food because none of us can. We live in Canada, we live wherever, our food is transported, there's over farming, there's soil depletion, no food has the right nutrient quality anymore. Storing food, somebody measured the decline in nutrient levels the longer food is stored uncooked in a fridge. Then they've even looked at how nutrients are made less available by cooking or processing or whatever it is. There are a dozen reasons or more why you need to take some basic form of supplementation every day. Exercise, pain, stress, veganism, vegetarianism, or restricted diets of any kind. I eat a very low carb diet, plus I don't eat dairy, plus I don't eat grain and all of these things. That puts me also in a restricted diet category. It means that there are certain nutrient groups that I'm getting less of, but I feel healthier and I function better on this diet. It works for me. Right? So every person has different nutrient requirements, but at the end of the day, there are some basics that everybody needs to take. I'm going to ask you about those 5 basics in a moment, Dr. Carr. The next thing is that you take medication, whether you're taking an antacid, a proton pump inhibitor for your heartburn, which is huge, you're taking antidepressants. I mean, how many people come in and they're on an anti-anxiety, antidepressant? People are taking sleeping pills, blood pressure pills, high cholesterol pills, diabetes pills. How many people are on a prescription? But I take thyroid medicine because I have no thyroid, but it's still a pill. It's going into my body. It needs to be processed. I take hormones. Every time my liver processes a Tylenol, an Advil, a Metformin, or a hormone like progesterone even, I'm using up nutrients to do the work. If I'm stressed, anxious, upset, I am using up nutrients for my body to feel those things. If I go on a hike, whatever it is I do, I'm using nutrients, and there's no way I could eat enough. How much spinach do I need for magnesium, Dr. Carr?
8 pounds and every day.
8 pounds of spinach.
Every day.
And I tell patients to eat 3 cups of green leafies for their bone health, and that's not even gonna. So yes, I'm not gonna eat 8 pounds of spinach a day, and I'm not gonna eat 16 pounds of something else to try and get what. And I've had patients ask me this. They'll say, well, can't I just modify my diet? I said, okay, you can. We can calculate for you exactly, but then you will be clinically obese. Because for the amount of food you're going to need to eat to get every single nutrient in the proportions that your body needs it, it's more food than anybody can eat. So I would like to just, yes, thank you for that, because it's really clear, and we know this for certain. I mean, I've been doing this now 16 years. You've been doing this a long time. We know people need nutritional supplements. Drug-induced nutrient depletions, life-induced nutrient depletions, right? So what are your favorite recommended supplements? If anybody just, we've never seen them, we don't know anything about them, we don't know what their stress is, we don't know what their hormones are, we don't know what their childhood was like, we don't know what their gut function is, we don't know whether they can digest and absorb well from their food, or, all the things that we check, we know none of this about patients. So that average person that says, Dr. Carr, gosh, this getting old sucks, right? Because my brain is a bit foggy, I'm tired, I just don't have the same get up and go. Is there a vitamin I should take?
Okay. You know which ones I'm going to talk about. The first and foremost, okay, some caveats. So Dr. Iyer is not talking about people who are on cancer chemotherapy or any of that. Both of us
Right.
are not trained in cancer, so cancer is excluded from this. Just, people like you and me who they just want to feel better. So just ballpark, recommendations without going through anything. One is multivitamin. And multivitamin is extremely important for so many reasons. One of the big ones, and I'm not going to talk about all of them, one of the big ones is, does your multivitamin contain adequate quantities of iodine? Because hypothyroidism is so common. And in a country like Canada, you're probably thinking, we don't have iodine deficiency here. No, you may be surprised, we might. So we can measure your iodine, of course. But just a basic level of 150 micrograms. So does your multi contain that? Iodine is one of the big ones. Not too much, because too much of iodine, again, is going to give you a whole lot of problems. That is very important. And so 1 or 2 or maybe maximum 4 capsules can give you most of the basic ones. And so many, I mean, this is anecdotal report, but at the same time, you can, try them on for yourself and see how you feel. So many patients we've had who felt so much better on just a multi, nothing, not even everything else.
You remember the healthy living packs?
Yeah.
That we used to have? Oh my word, how I wish we could have access to that. And here's an interesting point. The reason we weren't allowed to continue to make them and bring them into Canada was they changed, they became very strict about how much vitamin D a person can have. And right now the maximum you can have is, I believe it's now 2,000. Yeah. Back then it was 1,000. Yeah. And you know that none of our patients are on 1,000 or 2,000, but we measure. So the clarification here is that we measure vitamin D levels. And when we measure, I can tell you that the average patient is taking well over 2,000 units of vitamin D a day to maintain adequate optimal levels. But, that multivitamin in the Healthy Living Pack was unbelievable. The people that loved it, we had people ordering from Ontario, people we've never even met before, because they've noticed the differences in their family. So yes, okay, so let's go through the list now.
The next is magnesium.
Magnesium.
Dr. Iyer and I think even we can travel without our multis, but we will not travel without our magnesium. Again, magnesium is a very important, mineral for more than 300 or 400 different enzymatic reactions in your body. Mood, sleep, blood sugar management are 3 of the top ones. So again, how will you know if you're getting too much of magnesium? You'll have diarrhea. So when you have diarrhea, you know that you're getting too much of magnesium. We can also test.
So we say take it to bowel tolerance.
Bowel
And
tolerance.
anytime we say take magnesium to bowel tolerance, you just keep increasing your dose each day. So if you're on two capsules twice a day, you'll go to 3 and 2, then 3 and 3, then 4 and 3, then 4 and 4. And at whichever dose gives you diarrhea, you back down 1. So if at 4 and 4 you get loose stool, then your dose is 4 and 3, which will shock most people because that is how much. If you get little eye twitches, if you get little muscle cramps and just like feeling like your legs are weak going up the stairs or whatever, if you have constipation but you're taking your flax and all of these things, everybody needs magnesium. But I'll have to tell you, Dr. Carr, I will give up magnesium before I give up my methylated B complex. Because that makes such a difference to my brain and my mood and my energy.
So one more thing I wanted to mention about magnesium is this, we used to get a lot of this before. A blood magnesium level will not tell you how much you need. So we've had so many patients telling us, Natasha, do you remember? Doctor, my magnesium levels are normal. Like,
why are you making me take it? And then I say, take it and tell me how you feel. Oh yeah, look, I'm sleeping better. Look, my eye twitch is gone. Look, my muscle cramping is gone.
We can test
Look,
for it.
I can exercise.
Yes, but it's specialized testing, not available in
red blood cell magnesium is the gold standard to measure, and we don't have access to this testing. We have to order it from the US. That's why we say just take it to bowel tolerance. But if you insist, yes, absolutely, we'll order you the test. But a serum magnesium will be normal for the longest time, even when you're not feeling well, because magnesium is so important. Your body is pulling it from the bone, from all of the stores to keep your blood levels normal. Remember, when I'm doing a cardiac resuscitation or some person has coded and CPR, and that magnesium is an important drug that we use for heart health, right? And so magnesium, without magnesium, your heart will not beat well, right? So, okay, so we are at multivitamin, magnesium. I mentioned the B complex. Next one.
Next is omega-3 fatty acids. So again, there's a big difference between fish oil and omega-3 because you need to check how much of, so there are two of them, EPA, DHA. So they are usually in different combinations. Sometimes higher DHA helps brain function better. So combination of EPA, DHA. Now, when it comes to omega-3 supplements, one of the big things, again, we keep going back to quality. So if it is a fish oil, now for the fish, their liver is also, so cod liver is one of the common ones. Their liver is also a detoxification organ. And we know about the high contamination in fish. So high quality supplement companies will make sure that all the contaminants are taken out and they're not there in the capsules. So that is another big one. Now, one important thing I want to mention when we talk about omega-3s, so omega-3 fatty acids are considered to be essential fatty acids. There are some essential.
When you say essential, like vitamin D, what is essential? Meaning?
Essential means your body cannot make it. So that is why we talk about carbohydrate being a non-essential nutrient, because your body can live without it, can make it, but your body cannot make omega-3s. Your body cannot make some amino acids. So that's amino acids make protein. So omega-3 fatty acids, and even if you are eating sea fish every day, I can guarantee you're not going to get enough omega-3s.
I think it's like you have to eat salmon 4 times a day to even try to come close to your daily. I mean, I like salmon, but I'm not going to eat it every day to that amount. Like, and there's no way.
Eating 4 times a day anyway. So
actually, I'm just going to Google how much omega-3 in a serving of salmon.
So the other important thing is, Natasha, it depends on where the salmon's coming from. So Atlantic salmon versus Pacific salmon, it's different. Again, going back to testing, we can test your levels of omega-3s, but bottom line, you can safely take omega-3 fatty acids at a reasonably,
500
dose. Sorry?
500 milligrams of omega-3.
In how big a piece of salmon?
In a 3 to 4 ounce portion. And this is wild salmon, sockeye, coho, chum, and pink salmon.
Okay. So going back to the omega-3 fatty acid as a supplement, so this thing of, if you take too much of omega-3, you're going to start clotting too much. That was just one or two rare studies. Interestingly, Natasha, omega-3 fatty acids is a prescription drug I don't know, is Lovaza available here?
No.
So it's in the US, it's a prescription drug for high triglycerides.
Right. And so omega-3s, again, we should do one just on heart health and omega-3s because of your omega-3 index and all of these other things that patients should know. So we've got a multivitamin, magnesium B complex, omega-3, and vitamin D was the
fourth one. So vitamin D, again, because we can talk until kingdom come. Bottom line, how much of vitamin D you need depends on what your blood levels are. And you cannot decide your blood levels based on, your sun exposure, even in summer. So this is, again, an app that is available. And, our mutual friend, Sandra, told us about this app. So she was checking her sun exposure from this app, and she realized she's someone who's quite active and she spends a lot of time outside in summer. She was not getting enough. And of course, it depends on skin color. Someone like mine or Dr. Iyer's skin color, we will never make enough. So bottom line, you need to know your levels. And depending on that, we'll talk about vitamin D separately, I think. So yes, you're not going to make adequate vitamin D from, being in the sun, even during summer and minimally clothed, so far north on the earth.
Yeah, so the latitude makes a difference. So the closer to the equator you are, the stronger the sun, the better your chances are. But the darker your skin, even then, if you're closer to the equator, you're going to have less vitamin D produced in your skin with darker skin color than lighter skin color. Again, there's no rhyme or reason because all of my Caucasian patients, when I measure them, some of them are 60 some of them are 20, some of them are 110. In 15 years, though, I've had one patient with normal blood levels of vitamin D and, and they were not taking vitamin D, but there was some in the multivitamin.
Okay, so again, going back to the vitamin D and multivitamin, for most of you, it's not enough. It's a very small dose. So vitamin D, again, for skin color is one of the big things. And Natasha, the other thing that people here are very surprised to know is in India, we don't go out in the sun when it's 40 degrees centigrade. So
right. That is and then of course, here in Canada, even if you're out in the summer and you're wearing a bikini and all of that, people are wearing sunblock. Yep. And makeup has sunblock and body lotions have all these things in them. So we're not getting things that we need. So you can't tell me, oh, well, I go out in the sun every day, so I don't need to take vitamin D. In the winter, you're covered. Only your face, like through a little bit, is going to maybe get some sun. So on that note, for me, I've got multivitamin, magnesium, B complex, omega-3, and vitamin D.
One thing,
and a probiotic, I think, will leave as a separate option.
So yes, number 5 is a probiotic. We'll talk about it in a separate video.
So how did you get number 5 as the probiotic? Because I've got a magnesium, B complex, omega-3, and vitamin D as 5.
Magnesium is the other one. I didn't talk about B vitamins.
Oh, I added B complex because I was saying that I would give up magnesium before I gave up a B complex. But I think that B complex is pretty important for every person.
So one thing before we end this video, I just wanted to talk about daylight exposure and vitamin D because many people get confused. Yes, you do need daylight exposure, but it is not for vitamin D. It is to sleep better because when daylight falls on your eyes, there is a wonderful, body's biological clock, which gets triggered with daylight exposure. And that is extremely important because a whole lot of our genes are associated with the body's clock. So for that, you do need daylight exposure. And if you have sleep issues, ideally you need to get daylight exposure before midday without, dark glasses, without anything, right out in the sun. But in winter, of course, you cannot get that. Versus, later on in the day, if you have sleep issues, it's a good idea to wear dark glasses. So have your, morning cup of tea or coffee on your deck. Yes, daylight exposure is important, not for vitamin D. That is my point.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Kar, for clarifying. I am so excited to have had you connect with our patients, let them get a feel for who you are. And see, I said you were a brainiac, and here you are talking about, light exposure and dispelling some of the myths. And I think that visit of yours in their First Steps to Wellness program is critical, because like I said, I'm so obsessed with going through, these are your labs, these are your results, this is what's going on, and I'm troubleshooting and trying to fix what's broken, and I don't have enough time to go through all of these details with patients. So thank you for doing this, so patients can be more informed, and then they'll understand that, yes, when they come to you, and if I found an autoimmune disease, you're going to guide them to a more specific protocol for autoimmune disease. If they have insulin resistance, you're going to be talking to them about what to add to that whole thing. So, I'm really grateful for your time, Dr. Carr. I'm glad you talked about metformin. We have to do another recording just on that one alone. But, I'm really excited that you're part of our clinic and part of our program, and now patients can see why.
Thank you, Natasha. It's a pleasure and an honor. Bye now.
Take care.